Hey everyone, now that the Shovelhead engine is fully broken in and the compression test is looking good, we're going to take this time to set up the carburetors and do the jetting. And we're going to use the LM-2 exhaust gas analyzer and logger that I've demonstrated in previous videos to do so. And we can see this bike is modified for this test set. We can see there's an O2 Bung installed. In the front cylinder's exhaust pipe, I'm adding some bolt loosening agent onto that and have been for the last couple days just to help me out and let this loosen up as I prepare to do this operation. The test set now comes in a nice plastic case. Way back when, mine only came in a cardboard box. And here's the main unit. Regrettably, mine is a single sensor unit, not a dual, so I actually have to do this test twice on the V-Star. It includes a removable SD card for the data logging. Power is connected via a cigarette lighter style 12-volt adapter. I made a further adapter for other motorcycles that connects that adapter directly to the battery. Here's a cable that they supplied that I modified for my motorcycle needs that connects to a single ignition pulse that's used to know how fast the engine is spinning during the test. This cable could be further modified to support throttle position sensor, but I don't support that on either of my bikes. And finally, we have the harness for the oxygen sensor as well as the oxygen sensor itself. This includes the necessary power required for the heater of the oxygen sensor. I don't keep any extra handlebar stuff on the Shovelhead, but I got an extra one on the V-Star, so I'm going to pull this off now and move it over to the Shovelhead, and we're going to use that to hold the monitoring equipment. I always find this kind of amusing because the only thing this bike has up here is a neutral light and an oil light, and that's it. This is my foam mount that I keep on the V-Star, but it does a good enough job to hold the test set. Because the test set shape is kind of strange on the bottom, it'll be secured with tape on the bottom of the test set. 7/8 wrench will be used to remove the cap off the O2 sensor bung. Light percussion is used to break it loose. We could still see a silhouette of anti-seize from last time, which is why this job wasn't impossible. As I start making my connections into the LM-2, I make sure that there's going to be enough slack available as I tie it off to the handlebars for the maximum deflection when the bars are turned all the way in both directions, and I lock it down with some Velcro. These are all the cables associated with the power. This is going to be directly connected to the battery, which means it's going to be removed when it's not in use. This end goes into the LM-2. The cigarette lighter adapter we can see is taped so that vibration doesn't knock it out. Again, everything is bundled together as it's installed, leaving enough slack for deflection of the bars in any given direction. The other end is secured under the seat. This would be connected only during use or it would drain battery very quickly, but we'll give it a test run right now, make sure everything's working fine, and we see it powers up, come to the boot screen. Here's the cable for the O2 sensor. I'm going to start doing some cable management here for it. Once this is bundled up, I'll take this end and I'm going to connect it down here by the horn. I'll temporarily plug the sensor in now and leave it hanging right over the handlebars for calibration purposes later. Now I'm going to lift my seat and install my AMF tool, so I can plug in my wire for the engine speed. So I disconnect the signal to the tachometer and replace that connection with my cable for the LM-2. These new cables will join the bundles with the existing cables, and the remaining connections will plug into the LM-2 unit. Take one more minute to redress and inspect all of the cables, make sure everything is solid, and it looks like we're done with all the cables. We'll plug it in. I got an E2 error. I plugged it into the wrong port for the oxygen sensor, so I'm going to flip that now. And after it boots up, we can see now we got the W showing that it's warming up. So we'll let it warm up, speed this up for the video, and then once it's warmed up, we should get a reading. And we see that it's 20.9, which is good, but we're going to rerun the calibration anyway, just for the video. So I'm going to hit mode. I'm going to go to calibrate sensors, hit enter, start sensor calibration. We can see 20.9. That's definitely good. I'll wait for this to cool down as I've cut off the power. With the oxygen sensor now disconnected from the cable, I'm able to rotate it. So I'm screwing it in to the exhaust pipe, but I have to get everything out to the side in order to accomplish this so it's able to turn freely. As we see here, once it's fully in, I'll just give it a light tighten down with the wrench, nothing crazy. And then I'll feed that wire back through where it won't get caught on anything like the shifter and what have you. Around front and back into the connector. That connector is now dressed off on top of the horn, making this installation complete. So this is my view of the handlebars as seated on the top of the bike. And here's the cables running alongside. Everything is secured. Definitely not a daily driver, obviously, but for testing purposes, this is all safe. And here's the cables around front. Again, everything's secured and we're ready to go. An observation before I begin, I know this is running rich and it's easily demonstrated because, well, you don't need the enricher to turn on this engine, and that's a dead giveaway. But besides that, it's also evident that it's running rich just in its sound. But this observation is obviously limited to idle and startup where things run differently when it's cold. Be that as it may, this thing is running rich all around. With no enricher, obviously the use of the throttle lock is employed. I get it running and we're going to wait for this to warm up, and I just want to make sure that my RPM is working, the signal looks good, and that's one thing I wanted to verify. Obviously make sure no settings need to be changed. And you look at the O2 sensor coming up, and yeah, that's rich for idle, but I do want to let it warm up before I pass judgment. And what I'm going to do now that it's warmed up is I'm going to turn the adjustment screw just to see how much it takes to get it set up, and that's like less than an eighth of a turn to move it from 12 to 14, so that's really tweaky, and that tells me already, as I gently give it gas and see these no load RPM changes and what happens, I already know that I'm going to be making some changes to the jets, but I think we're okay just to take it out on the road and see what we're looking at in this current configuration. So that's what we're going to do now. As usual, I sync my camera to the computer with a couple of bursts of the throttle after I start recording, just like this. Synced up, I'll slowly make my way to the main highway, just observing what the values are before I get there in case there's a problem. And I can see as an observation, the off-idle throttle is rich, but to what extent I don't know because I wasn't recording yet. But I get up to that main area, making sure that I have enough room at the intersection, and I make my turn, and this is where I start opening it up from first into second gear and laying on it to conduct a test. And we can see I'm just giving it now some throttle, and as I do it, it is dropping down. It is getting really rich. We're seeing 10s at this point. And when I see we're getting into the 10s, this is going to be the only pass I'm going to do. And we're going to bring it back because that is just super rich. Look at that. On the way back, I attempted the gentlest over 2,000 RPM run to keep it as constant as possible. And we can see we're looking at low 12s all the way. And this is barely any load. This is just off idle throttle. So what we're going to do is we're going to get it back and we're going to swap out that one jet to the next leaner size, and we're going to reconfigure the needle for the idle, and then we're going to see what we get on the next run. Getting to the intermediate jet will require the removal of the bowl, so I do that now. As normally the case, I see the O-ring got stuck in the gasket, so I remove the gasket very carefully. And there's my O-ring, so I take it off and place it back on. I verify my 295, and then I remove it, replacing it with my 28, which I've just cleaned and re-inspected. I screw this one back in, gently snugging it back down. Everything is now ready for reassembly. This engine is hand touch cold again, and I'll tell you, I did need the choke to turn it on this time. We're going to see what the numbers are as it warms up, and we're looking at what I expect to be lean, and it is. It's in the 15s, obviously. I'm going to have to set up the needle again because we changed that jet as expected. So I turned it rich, and then I'm going to start leaning it out and bring down the RPMs. Remember, I have to let the bike warm up, and I didn't want it warming up at 16 to 1. So now I've got it about set up. I think this is good to take it out 1,000 RPM at around 14, high 13s. So we're taking off again on this run, and I'm just evaluating that low speed through the neighborhood first, as I usually do. No signs of anything terrible that I could see while I was on the bike. There is an area that I see where I hit a certain RPM, it does go lean, but I don't see it while I'm on the bike, so I do proceed. Though we do see as I get to the intersection, I do stop and attempt to turn that needle just a hair to richen it out just a bit, just to drop it down a couple of tenths. And we see me doing that a couple times, but it's really hot. It was probably like a 16th of a turn, and that was it, if anything. Now pay close attention to what happens here, because a problem is introduced, and I vaguely remember this at around 2,500 RPM. Right here went from 13.5 to 16.2. And then in this moment, it dropped to 11.5. You could see in the RPMs there's also a stumble right there when this happened. It was only under load at 2,500 for a moment. Let's continue watching. Look at that. You seeing this right here? You seeing it go up to 15 and a half, hit 16, and then it drops. It gets really rich. And that's when the main jet took over. And there's a hole between the transition of our mid-range to our main jet, as we see right there. So we got a couple of problems right here. One thing is consistent, that main jet is way too big. One thing I failed to do this run was get that long, consistent 2,000 RPM run to just make sure we've dialed in that intermediate jet. So I'm going to get that on the next run after I swap out that main jet, because I know that main jet is no good. I've got a cleaned and inspected 68. Main jets are much easier to swap on these carbs from the bottom, and I have a Tupperware container and a 5/8 wrench to do this. I just loosen that nut on the bottom and let the gas drain into the Tupperware container. I don't spill any gasoline at all. There's my 72 exposed. My record shows that I did good with a 68 last time. That's why I'm skipping 70. And I just unscrew it right from the bottom, really easy. As long as that's the only thing that loosens, I don't have to open up the unit. Pop in the 68, tighten it down, and just give it a little twist, not too tight. The bottom of this cover captures sediment, so I'm sure to clean it out before I reinstall it. So I'll just hand tighten this nut back on and snug it down with the wrench. That's it. I failed to do this the first time on video, and I should have, and that's to mark how many turns it is to fully seated before I made any adjustments to see how far off it was when it was a good mixture idling correctly before I replaced that first jet. But I'm going to do it now on this current setup, and we're looking at less than 1.75, which falls within what we need. So we'll start it up now using the choke and see what we're working with. This mixture here is with the choke on, and we'll watch over the course of the next 30 seconds as I really slowly lay off that choke. So I'm back at that intersection now, and we're set up with the leaner main jet. And even as I'm here, I'm looking and I'm monitoring, and I see that it's kind of lean on idle. And I'm trying to make adjustments. We can see with my fingers as I'm burning myself in the engine, just to get that screw to turn, that idle mixture screw, just a little bit richer. So now I take off on the green, and I do the same run as I've done before. Still got that lean spot right over there during that transition, and as it goes rich, doesn't get nearly as bad as it did before. It's not dropping into the 10s. We can see that it's in the low 12s, high 11s, low 12s now on the main jet, so that is a drastic improvement over what we saw before. Now that I fixed that main jet, which we knew was really rich, I do want to revisit the other jet that I did make a lot leaner, because it may be a little too lean. Maybe I was a little bit too ambitious there. I should have addressed that one first. I don't know. But we could see, looking at it now, just with the throttle cracked open, we're in the 14s. It's a bit lean, so we're going to have to take a look at that. And the air bleed on this one is fixed, so there's nothing I can do about fixing that transition. You see it getting real lean into the 15s. You know that engine is going to break up. 15, 16, right there, it just breaks up. That's terrible. There's a good chance somebody along the way had opened up this air bleed from its original size of 40. And that causes a delay of the main jet opening, and you could make them bigger, but you can't make them smaller without significant work to the carburetor. That was a problem with these early S&S Shorty E's. But yeah, I believe this straightaway, off idle, no load is just a little too lean now. I've dialed in the needle to the replacement jet, 29.5. This is at full temperature that I've done this, so I don't have to do any readjustments while I'm waiting at the light. As I take off, coming out of the neighborhood, things are looking really good so far. Now at the light, the idle's a little bit higher than I wanted, but the mixture is definitely stable, engine being fully warmed up for this test event. Skipping ahead to the green light. Now taking off here, there's lots of traffic today. I can't run through the gears like I want to at this intersection, but I do test it out more thoroughly on the way back. I take what I could get though, as I make my left-hand turn onto the main drag. This first roll all the way to 3,500 RPM was really good, sitting at around 12. That second pull cut prematurely. Note I had to stop here and switch lanes to continue accelerating and testing. Things are looking good. I'm seeing 11s and 12s at wide open throttle, and I decelerate right here. It makes me wonder, maybe I'll try a 66 for the main jet instead of the 68. Yeah, I don't know. I didn't get a really good pull, but looking at this, it wouldn't hurt to go down just one main jet size. You see here, these are not really aggressive pulls, but if it doesn't work, I could always take it back up. You look at this run that I did on the way back, where I wasn't really aggressive. I just slowly laid onto the gears as I increased my speed, and it looks a lot flatter, not trying to hit that wide open throttle and dump it. So yeah, definitely going to try knocking it down a jet to see what happens on the next run, because this looks really good. For normal driving, we're already seeing that there's a major improvement here. Look at that fuel-air ratio line that we got. The 66 main has arrived. I'm going to install it off camera. And we're back at it for what should be our final run. The temperature barometric pressure is ideal today. It is average for our Florida summer. The bike is at full temperature now, or just about, making our way to the intersection. And I adjust that idle needle just a hair. I make it a hair lean, and that's it. I mean like a click. There's going to be a truck in front of me, so I'm going to wait for him to turn out of my lane before I start off. So you're going to see me slow on first and second gear. And this is that hesitation, just waiting on the truck. I did not lay onto it in a second. I was going to wait for third gear for wide open throttle. Third gear, we're in wide open throttle, and I'm seeing the numbers exactly where I want it to be, in the 12s. What you can't see in this video is not only is it wide open throttle, but it is uphill. There is an incline on this launch. But now we're decelerating. And that's exactly what I was looking for in this environment with this temperature, now into a Florida summer. Now, yeah, I'm very happy. Let's look at some driving now, not under wide open throttle. And we have some just regular acceleration, not opening up as fast as possible. And we could see when we do that, we're sitting there around 13 and a half. We're not loading down the engine. And I'm looking for something like that too. That seems good to me. Deceleration's important too, and it's fine. It's not getting so lean that you hear it popping out the exhaust or anything like that. So everything's normal on deceleration. I did notice that my throttle cable was a bit loose, so it was acting kind of wonky. I did tighten that up during this video. I don't think there's anything left to do but get this bike home, remove the test set, and enjoy my summer with it. 29.5 mid, 66 main, and that's the verdict as discovered with the LM-2 using a computer to jet my carburetor on this Shovelhead engine. I hope you enjoyed this video, found it entertaining and informative. Do me a favor, hit that like button down below, helps me out a lot when you do, and that subscribe button for more videos like this when they come out. When the next video comes out in the series, a link will be posted in the top right corner. Again, I hope you enjoyed this video. Thanks for watching.
Thanks for watching. Would you like to reply?